Thank you. This is, what you're looking at is an X-ray of my chest. And what you see there is an implantable cardiac defibrillator, or ICD. I am at risk of a sudden cardiac arrest. I hope I don't have one here today on stage, although that would make it remarkable or special. But I do have that device because I'm at risk of a sudden cardiac arrest. I never thought that I would be at risk of a sudden cardiac arrest until the day when I passed out on this train platform. And after that, I realized, or I was told, that I had a relatively common type of genetic heart muscle disease called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. HCM occurs in 1 out of 500 people in both men and women of all ethnicities. And it is the #1 cause of sudden cardiac arrest in young people, and people that are younger than 30 years of age. Now, sudden cardiac arrest is a pretty big deal. It's a very serious health problem in the United States. According to the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Association, it claims the lives of 325,000 people each year in the US. That is almost 1,000 people a day. It's 1 person at every 2 minutes. So it's a pretty big deal. So I wasn't too keen on the idea of getting the ICD. It's not, in fact, I was pretty horrified by it, to be frank. But it turns out the ICD is the most effective way to prevent a sudden cardiac arrest in people who are at risk. And this is me the day after I got my surgery. So I went ahead with a plan, and in November of 2007, I got the device. Now, the ICD does a lot more than just prevent sudden, I shouldn't say just prevent sudden cardiac arrest, but it does a lot more than that. It collects a lot of data about its own function and about the patient's clinical status. It monitors its own battery life, the amount of time it takes to deliver a life-saving shock. It monitors a patient's heart rhythm, daily activity, and even looks at variations in chest impedance to look if there is buildup of fluids in the chest. So it's a pretty complex little computer you have built into your body. Unfortunately, none of this very valuable data is made available to the patient who originates it. I have absolutely no access to it, no knowledge of it. Doctors, on the other hand, have full 24/7 unrestricted access to this information. Even some of the manufacturers of these medical devices offer the ability for doctors to access this information through mobile devices. Compare this to the patient's experience. Patients, like I said, patients have no access to this information. And the best we can do really is to get a printout or a hard copy of an interrogation report when you go into the doctor's office for a 6 months to 12-month visit, and that's what we can do. There's nothing else. Also, these reports are designed for doctors, not really designed for patients. So a lot of patients are discouraged from even getting this information. It's hard to read. The irony here is that patients are the ones living with heart disease, not doctors, and yet patients are the ones left in the dark. In my view, part of the problem is the cardiac rhythm disease management industry, which claims that a pacemaker or a defibrillator is put into a patient's body for the therapy it delivers, not for the information it gathers, and that providing data to patients does not fit their business model. It's not what they do. Another part of this problem is the fact that the cardiac rhythm or medical device companies really look at doctors as their customers, not patients. Patients are only the recipients of the therapy, and for the most part are just expected to just trust that everything is going to be all right. Now, thankfully, patients are turning into e-patients. The Society for Participatory Medicine defines this new class of people as patients who are empowered, who are equipped, engaged, and who are enabled. It really is a movement that is happening in which networked patients are shifting from being just mere passengers to becoming responsible drivers of their care. I've taken this message to heart, personally, and I've looked to empower, educate, and equip myself with knowledge. So I go to cardiology conferences, I take classes on how to program these devices, and I do everything I can to raise my own level of health literacy. Now, what we got to think about it is becoming pretty clear that information, we cannot just sit back and passively expect for information to be passed down from experts. Patients really need to engage in the co-production of health intelligence. So I do what I can, and I collect a lot of data from a lot of little devices that I have. I have a Fitbit, and I use that to track my activity levels. I have a blood pressure cuff that hooks up to my iPhone and my iPad, and I use that to track my blood pressure. I have a Wi-Fi scale that I use to track my weight with. More recently started using a Zio to track the quality of my sleep. And what I'm trying to do here is paint a broader picture in high resolution of what my health looks like. So I got all these little bits of data, and I put it together in spreadsheets, and I analyze stuff, and I try to make sense of it. Right? From my $30,000 defibrillator, I get basically no data. And indeed, it's very sad, but it's true. Nothing at all, right? No information. So I do what I can, right, with the resources I have. And so I've created this Google spreadsheet that it's kind of neat that I can access from my mobile devices. It's hooks up to a form. So whenever I feel an arrhythmia, I can just pull out my phone and I can record it, and I track whether it's an atrial arrhythmia or a ventricular arrhythmia, what I was doing. And the whole point here is to really try to figure out if there are triggers that I can identify and have fewer of those arrhythmias, hopefully. And this has proven very helpful to me. I've managed, for example, to figure out the fact that Scotch whiskey causes me to go into atrial fibrillation. Right? I'm not always in atrial fibrillation, but Scotch whiskey will get me there, so no more Scotch for me. It's funny that it doesn't happen with other types of alcoholic beverages. Scotch seems to do it. Caffeine also seems to exacerbate my ventricular arrhythmias. When I have more frequent ventricular arrhythmias when I drink coffee, so I don't drink any caffeinated beverages anymore. So it's a lot of issues. So the question is, who owns this data, right? I mean, we have, here's a device that's part of me, part of who I am. I wake up with it, I go to bed with it. And yet, I don't have access to this information. Who owns this data that is collected from my device? Is it medical device companies so that they can use it for post-market surveillance of their products and see how their products are doing, improve their products? Or does it belong to patients like me so that I can use it to understand my condition better and perhaps take better care of myself and hopefully live a longer and healthier life? I had the opportunity to ask this question to the FDA. And the FDA responded by saying that the FDA does not regulate the raw data that is collected and stored by the manufacturers of medical devices. So it becomes clear to me that this change will likely not come from the top down, right? It's not going to come from medical device companies. It might not come from government. So it might come from a room full of people like yourselves who are creative and can think up some ideas and hopefully ways to shake up and disrupt some of these business models that are ancient and are not up to speed with today's world. I watched a talk by Clayton Christensen, a Harvard Business School professor. I'm sure many of you here, if not all of you, are familiar with his work, and innovation guru and author and so many other things, in which he said about healthcare. We need to bring disruptive technology that will drive the decentralization of the industry. And I believe he's right on. Only through some disruptive innovation that we'll be able to solve some of the problems in healthcare, some of the bigger problems, such as the one that I'm dealing with. But one thing is for sure, in this world of low-cost connectivity in which we live today, we all here should find it unacceptable for data to bypass the patient. It's not something that we should accept anymore, right? We all have the right to our health information. It's a matter of fairness, it's a matter of justice, and it's a matter of patients' rights. Thank you for your time.